For 6 years, I lived just outside Phoenix with my partner, Maria, and her 2 daughters, Hope and Ellie. The house was a single-story stucco box, beige and sunburnt, with an air conditioner that rattled like a dying lung and carpet that stayed damp in winter. But I paid for it. I paid for everything in that house, even the things I didn't own. I paid with money. I paid with time. I paid with silence. Rent, groceries, gas, cell phone bills. New tires when Ellie drove over a curb texting her friends. Field trip forms signed with my name and paid with my bank account. Dental work, concert tickets, streaming subscriptions I never used. I put Ellie's beat-up Corolla on my insurance after her dad forgot to answer the phone. Hope needed braces. Maria said we'd figure it out together. But together meant I'd take another client, skip another night of sleep, move another payment further down the road. I even built them a patio. Not with contractors, not with a crew. With my own hands. I dug into that dirt for weeks after work, calloused and blistered, while the girls rolled their eyes from inside the living room. I laid the stone myself, bought the fire pit, bought the chairs, bought the goddamn citronella candles so we wouldn't get eaten alive if we ever sat out there. I told myself it was for us. Family nights, movie nights, laughter under the stars. But we never sat there together. Not once. Instead, the girls had friends over. They'd roast marshmallows, spill drinks, burn holes in the cushions, and never thank me. Hope said once, "This is where we hang out. Not for you. It's not like your space." She wasn't even trying to be cruel. That was just the truth as she saw it. I wasn't part of the equation. I was the background. Sometimes, in the morning, I'd step out to the patio before the sun got too high, just to see if it was still there, just to see if anything I built ever stayed standing. They called me temporary, not once, not as a slip, as a joke, as a label. "He's not our real dad," Hope would say to her friends when I came to pick her up from school. "He's just the guy our mom's with right now," Ellie chimed in once. "He just rents a chair at this table." She smiled when she said it, like she'd rehearsed the line, and Maria said nothing. Every time. She sat beside me at the dinner table, chewing her food, cutting her meat in silence, as if the air didn't just collapse. Once, at Costco, we ran into a woman Maria hadn't seen in years, a former coworker. She looked at me, then at Maria, then at the girls. "Oh, your husband?" she asked, pointing to me. Maria laughed. No, she said. "Just my partner. Just..." I stood there holding a 48-pack of toilet paper, realizing I wasn't even worth the dignity of implication. Just a man who hovered nearby. Just a man who paid for things. Ellie crashed her car once. Not a big wreck, just a fender bender in the Walgreens parking lot. She called me, crying. I left work early, drove straight there, took pictures, dealt with the other driver, swapped insurance info. When we got home, she threw her keys on the counter and went straight to her room. No thank you. Not even eye contact. Maria patted my shoulder. "You're good with this stuff," she said. "Thank you. But not for me. Never for me. Always for what I could fix. What I could pay for. What I could cover." Hope turned 17 that year. I bought her a necklace. Nothing fancy, sterling silver, a birthstone in the middle. I wrapped it myself. She opened it in front of her friends. One of them asked, "Your dad got that?" She rolled her eyes. "Step. Not even. My mom's boyfriend. He's just trying too hard." They laughed. Maria was in the kitchen. She heard. I saw her flinch, but she never turned around. That's what made it worse. Not the words. Not the insults. Not the names. The silence. Maria's silence was the true betrayal. The passive shrug. The way she let it all sit in the air like damp laundry that would never dry. I waited for her to speak up. I waited for her to defend me. I waited for her to say, "He's the reason we have lights in this house." Or, "You will not speak to him like that." But she never did. She let them treat me like a substitute teacher in my own home. And I accepted it. For a long time, I accepted it. Because I told myself, they're kids. Kids push boundaries, test limits. They're angry about the divorce. Angry at the world. I told myself Maria would come around, would draw lines, would show me I mattered. I told myself love took time. That family took time. That if I kept showing up, they'd see. I told myself lies. Their father, the real one, sent birthday texts when he remembered. Maybe a check once a year. Christmas cards that arrived in January. But he was a myth, a ghost, a man with excuses. Sorry, Hope. His messages read, I've been swamped. Next time, I promise, Ellie. Next time. Always next time. But they never hated him. They never mocked him. They defended him. They called him Dad with reverence. They showed his photos to their friends. He was allowed to vanish and still got the title. I stood there every day, pouring money and hours and patience into the floorboards, and they wouldn't even call me by my name. One evening, we were watching a movie or trying to. I was on the couch, Maria beside me, the girls in the recliners. I said something, a dumb joke, something about the actor on screen. Hope didn't laugh. She didn't even look at me. She just turned to Ellie and said, God, it's like having a substitute dad. Can't wait till the real teacher comes back. Ellie snorted. Maria sipped her wine. I should have gotten up right then. Walked out. But I didn't. I sat there. Like a fool. Like a man afraid that if he left the room, the whole thing would collapse. I watched the rest of the movie without seeing it. I couldn't even tell you what it was. That night, Maria reached for me in bed. I turned away. She whispered, What's wrong? I didn't answer. I didn't trust my voice. Not anymore. I realized I hadn't been kissed in weeks. I hadn't been touched without obligation. I was useful, but not wanted. Every man knows the difference. Every man who stays too long in a house where he's outnumbered, outvoted, and unpaid in all the ways that matter. I thought I was building a future. I thought I was building a family. But all I was building was a budget they depended on. It happened on a Sunday night. I remember the roast chicken. I remember the sound of the skin crackling when I pulled it out of the oven. I remember the shape of the lemon slices, the way the smell filled the house, warm and citrusy and false. I remember the silence at the table, except for Hope scrolling her phone and Ellie tapping her nails against the water glass. I remember Maria complimenting the mac and cheese, like it cost her something to say it, like it would balance the books. I had done the grocery run that morning, cleaned the kitchen, prepped the food, grilled the corn outside in the November sun, laid out plates, napkins, poured lemonade into glasses with sugar on the rim, Hope's favorite. I did all the things a man does when he wants to be seen. And once again, I was invisible. They never looked up. Not really. They never asked how my day was. Never asked how work was going. Never noticed that my eyes were bloodshot, that I hadn't slept in days, that I was falling apart inside. I could have died at that table and they'd still be asking Maria to pass the salt. That night, Hope had friends over. 3 of them. Girls with expensive eyebrows and faces buried in phones. I had pulled out extra chairs. Set places for everyone. Maria had said, Are you sure? And I had smiled, lied, and said yes. I wanted to believe maybe this dinner would be different. Maybe if they saw me trying, they'd see me. Maybe. But Hope had other plans. She turned to one of her friends mid-meal, speaking loud enough for the whole table to hear, and said, He just rents a chair here until someone better shows up. They laughed. Even Ellie. Even Maria, though hers was quieter. Not quite a laugh, more like a breath caught in her throat. But she didn't stop it. She didn't say, That's enough. She didn't say, Don't talk to him like that. She just looked down and chewed her food. And me? I stood up, quietly, my fork still on the plate, my glass still full. I walked to the living room, sat down at my laptop, and opened every tab that ran our lives. The electricity, the water, the Wi-Fi, the rent, Maria's car insurance, Ellie's policy, Hope's cell phone plan, the grocery delivery service, the gas card. One by one, I canceled them. No warnings. No, we need to talk. No speeches. Just clicks. Quiet clicks. The sound of a man erasing himself. Then I printed out everything. Every upcoming bill, every canceled payment, every final notice I knew would arrive in 2 weeks. I placed them in a manila folder, walked back into the dining room, placed the folder on my empty chair. They all looked up. For a disposable man, I said, I seem to be paying a lot of permanent bills. Then I walked out, didn't slam a door, didn't yell, just walked into the bedroom, packed a bag, grabbed the safe where I kept receipts. Because yes, I kept receipts for everything I'd bought in that house. I had learned, somewhere between insult and silence, that nothing was ever really mine unless I could prove it. Maria followed me. What are you doing? She asked. Not in panic. Not even in sadness. Just confusion, like I was breaking the rules of a game we'd all agreed to play. I didn't answer. I went to the garage, opened the storage bins, pulled out the paperwork, the proof that the TV, the furniture, the coffee machine, the patio set, the couch, even the damn washer and dryer had been paid for by me. Not us. Me. That night, while they all watched from the porch like witnesses to a slow-moving disaster, I called a moving company, scheduled a pickup, took photos of everything that was mine, labeled it, marked it, documented it. Then I called Morgan, my daughter, mine by blood, mine by fire, from a previous marriage that had died quieter than this one. She lived mostly with her mother, but we'd stayed close. I had always made time for her, even when time was something I didn't have. She never mocked me, never called me temporary. She once said at 12, "You always show up. That's what makes you a dad." She picked up on the first ring. "Dad?" she said soft. "Are you okay?" I didn't realize I was crying until I heard my own voice shake. Later that night, I picked her up from her mother's house. We drove in silence. At a red light, she looked at me. "Can we leave now?" she asked. I nodded. We found a small apartment the next day. 2 bedrooms, creaky floors, bad parking. But it had a lock I controlled, a table I bought, a kitchen that only fed people who wanted to eat with me. I moved everything I had paid for, the dining table, the silverware, the chairs, the couch, the TV. Maria texted me once, said, "You're really taking everything?" I sent her a photo of the receipts. No words, just proof. She replied, "That's petty." I replied, "No, that's accounting." Hope tried calling Morgan. She wanted to know why we'd left. Morgan didn't answer. She blocked the number. She told me later, "If they didn't want you, they don't get to want me either." The next week, I got another message from Maria. "The fridge is empty. The rent's due. The girls need rides. Can we talk?" I left it on read. When the moving truck finally dropped off the last piece of furniture, I sat in our new apartment and listened to the quiet. No laughter at my expense. No girls in my house calling me renter. Just Morgan in the next room, playing music too loud. Just peace. I walked into the kitchen and cooked dinner for the 2 of us. Nothing fancy, eggs, toast, a little rice. She sat at the table, ate without looking at her phone. Halfway through, she said, "This is the best meal I've had in years." I asked why. "Because nobody at this table makes us feel like we don't belong." That was the moment it all snapped into place. The grief, the rage, the ache of years I'd spent trying to be seen by people who only saw my bank card. All of it dissolved into that single truth. Belonging isn't something you buy. It's something you're given. And in 6 years, that family never gave it to me. Not once. Maria called again a few nights later. Left a voicemail. Her voice cracked. "I didn't know it was this bad. I didn't know they made you feel like that. I didn't mean to let it get there." But she did. She saw it happen. Every slight, every insult, every time I reached across the table and came back empty. And she chose silence. Now I chose silence too. I didn't call her back. I didn't rage or explain. I didn't send a final message. I didn't give her the dignity of closure, because she'd already closed the door years ago. She just didn't hear it slam. Hope posted a photo on Instagram a week after we left. The living room was empty. The TV stand bare. The caption said, "Starting from scratch. Some people just aren't who you think they are." I almost replied, almost wrote, I was exactly who I said I was. You just weren't listening. But I didn't. Some silences say more than 1,000 replies. I sat with Morgan that night watching a movie she picked. She laughed out loud, leaned against me, said, "You're way more fun now." I asked why. She shrugged. "You don't look tired anymore." That's when I knew I'd been asleep for 6 years. Working, cooking, paying, hoping, begging for a place at a table I built with my own hands. A table where I was never fed. Now, in this small, quiet, sunlit apartment, I had a seat that no one could take from me. A seat I earned. And this time, I wasn't renting it. 2 weeks after I left, Maria texted. Not a long message. No apology. No acknowledgement of what had been said at the table that night. Just, "We're short on rent. Can you help?" Not, "I miss you." Not, "The girls were wrong." Just a statement, clinical and hollow. I stared at the screen for a long time. I could still see her face, the way she never blinked when they insulted me. The way she kept eating, like nothing had happened, like I was nothing. So I replied, "Disposable men don't pay permanent bills." She didn't write back. That was the first fracture. The first evidence that the world I'd propped up for 6 years was starting to buckle now that my hands were off it. A few days later, I got a call from Ellie. Not a text. A real call. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Her voice was clipped, teenage proud, but there was something in it. Strain. "We got a letter from the insurance company," she said. "They said the policy lapsed." I said nothing. "You took me off it?" Still I said nothing. "You said you'd keep me on your plan until I finished school. You promised." I finally spoke. That promise was made to a family, not a house full of tenants. She scoffed. "So this is revenge?" "No," I said calmly. "This is me acknowledging the contract was never signed. I just stopped pretending it was." She hung up. Morgan was sitting at the table. She didn't ask who it was. She just nodded once, like she already knew. She always knew. The next week I got another message. This time from Maria. She asked to meet. I agreed. Not for her, for closure. We sat at a diner halfway between her house and mine. Neutral territory. The kind of place with chipped coffee mugs and waitresses who know when to keep their distance. Maria looked tired. Older. Her makeup couldn't cover the truth anymore. Her eyes darted around, searching for something. Maybe a version of me she thought might still be soft. She said, "Things are bad. I didn't realize how much you covered until..." She didn't finish the sentence. I let the silence stretch. Finally she said, "I told them to apologize. I told them they were out of line, that they were cruel." I took a sip of my coffee. "You told them after I left. That's not courage. That's damage control." She flinched. "I didn't think it would get that bad," she whispered. "That's the problem, Maria. You didn't think at all." She looked up. Her mouth opened, closed. Then, "What do you want me to say?" I leaned back. "Nothing. There's nothing to say. I just needed to see if you'd changed." She bit her lip. Tears welled in her eyes. She reached across the table reflexively like muscle memory. I didn't take her hand. Instead, I said the one thing I had never said to her. "You chose comfort over courage." She blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means you knew. You saw. Every insult, every joke, every time they made me feel like I didn't belong. You saw it. And you let it happen. Because it was easier to keep the peace than defend the man who kept your lights on." Her face crumbled. She covered her mouth with her hand. I waited. I owed her that, the dignity of grief. But I didn't offer comfort. I had none left to give. When I stood to leave, she asked quietly, "Did you ever love them?" I paused, looked out the window. The sky was overcast. The world looked like it was holding its breath. "I wanted to," I said. "Every day I wanted to. But love needs soil. They never gave me any ground to grow in." Back in our apartment, Morgan was building a puzzle. One of those 2,000-piece monsters with shades of blue so close they blurred your eyes. She looked up and said, "Was it bad?" "No," I answered. It was honest. She nodded. That's worse. We spent that weekend rearranging the apartment. We hung curtains, bought plants. I taught her how to cook a proper steak. She showed me a playlist she'd made called Quiet Dad Moments. It had music I didn't understand, but I let it play. On Sunday night, we sat on the balcony. The air was cold enough for jackets. Morgan brought 2 mugs of hot chocolate. You know what I noticed? She said, sipping. What? You don't walk like you're waiting to be called anymore. That hit me harder than any insult. I asked, what do you mean? She shrugged. At their house, you always looked like you were waiting for someone to need something. Like you weren't allowed to sit still. Here you sit still. I looked down at my hands. The same hands that had fixed their cars, changed their light bulbs, built their patio. Hands that had become invisible from overuse. I didn't realize I was doing that, I said. Yeah, she replied. You did. Later that night, I got an email from the landlord of the old house. My name had been removed from the lease. Just a formality, but it felt like a ceremony. A burial. The final nail in a coffin I had built for myself. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just deleted it. Then I sat with Morgan and watched a documentary about whales. She fell asleep before it ended, her head on my shoulder. And I thought, this is what peace feels like. Not silence. Not loneliness. But freedom from pretending. Over the next month, I watched from a distance as the cracks turned into fractures. Hope started a GoFundMe for her senior trip. The bio said, unexpected financial difficulties. No mention of the man who had funded every trip before. Ellie tried to borrow money from a friend. I only knew because the friend's father, a man I'd helped fix a fence once, called me. Asked if everything was okay. I told him, everything is finally fair. Maria messaged me again, this time with fewer words. They miss you. I miss you. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. One night, Morgan asked, do you ever regret leaving? I thought about it. About the years I spent there. The money. The time. The effort. The evenings when I told myself one more sacrifice might finally buy me a place at their table. No, I said, because I didn't leave a family. I left a job, and I was never paid. Morgan grinned. That's dark. It's honest. We sat in silence again. But it wasn't heavy this time. It was shared. That week, she brought home her first report card from the new school. Straight A's. Her name at the top, circled in red pen. She handed it to me like it was a trophy. I wanted you to be the first to see, she said. I pinned it to the fridge. We didn't have magnets yet, so I used tape. It hung there, crooked and proud. That night, I cooked her favorite dinner. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. She smiled across the table. I like it here, she said. It's quiet, but not sad. I realized then that I had spent 6 years in a house full of noise, and none of it ever made me feel welcome. Here, in a small apartment with peeling paint and a borrowed TV stand, I felt whole. One morning, I found a letter on my nightstand, handwritten, folded in half. It said, Dad, I know I don't say it enough, but I see everything you've done for me. I saw you when they didn't. I hear you now. Thank you for choosing me. Love, Morgan. I cried then, not because it hurt, but because for the first time the weight I carried was acknowledged. Not just carried, seen. That letter sits in my wallet now. Not because I need a reminder, but because it's proof that everything I left behind was worth what I walked into. A daughter who knows I stayed. A life where I'm not temporary. A home built not with receipts but with respect. It's easy to pretend you're part of a family when the lights are on, the fridge is full, and the bills are paid. It's easy to mistake obligation for belonging. I did. For 6 years, I mistook sacrifice for love. I mistook silence for loyalty. I mistook myself for a father in a house that never once called me by the name I earned. Now I see it clearly. Respect isn't something you can buy. Not with rent. Not with braces. Not with patio furniture or college savings accounts. I paid for everything in that house except the one thing I needed. A place. Not a seat at the table. A place in their lives. in their eyes, in their stories. I never got it. And I waited. God, I waited. Through birthdays, through bad report cards, through sickness, through silence. I waited for one of them to say, "He's not my real dad, but he shows up like one." I waited for Maria to say, "This man made a life possible for us." I waited for a hug that wasn't forced, for a thank you that didn't come with an eye roll, for a moment, one where I felt chosen. It never came. The lesson came later, quietly, not in the storm, not in the slam of a door or the cut of another insult. Came in the stillness that followed. In the peace of an apartment where my name was finally on everything, the lease, the mailbox, the Wi-Fi password, the dinner conversation. In the sound of Morgan's laughter from the next room. In the way she said, "Dad," like it belonged to me. That's where the lesson lived. It lived in the absence. In the silence that didn't hurt. In the dinners that didn't taste like shame. In the mornings that started without dread. People ask me if I miss them. Maria. The girls. The old life. I miss who I thought they were. I miss the man I pretended to be to keep them fed, clothed, entertained. I miss the dream I sold myself, that maybe love could grow in a house where only the bills had my name on them. But do I miss them? No, because you can't miss what never truly saw you. The night I walked away, I thought maybe they'd chase me. Maybe Maria would come running. Maybe Hope or Ellie would realize something had shifted. Maybe someone would call me Dad, and mean it. They didn't. They missed the money, the rides, the safety net. But they never missed me. That's what broke the illusion. Because if a man can vanish from a household and all that remains is unpaid invoices, then he was never family. He was infrastructure, a wallet, a mechanic, a ghost in the walls. Morgan showed me what family really is. Not because she shares my blood, but because she chose me. Because she never used silence as a weapon. Because when I gave, she saw it. And when I hurt, she didn't look away. She's older now, almost grown, 1 foot in the world. But when she looks at me, she still says, "You're my constant." And I believe her. She saw me when no one else would. That's all a man wants. To be seen, to be heard, to be remembered not for what he paid, but for who he was. For how he stood in the doorway after work, exhausted but present. For how he filled the gas tank before anyone noticed it was empty. For how he sat through hours of silence hoping someone would speak to him like he mattered. Now I look back, and all I see is a stage I built for a show that never cast me. They performed family. I paid for the props. But I won't make that mistake again. Because love without respect is slavery. And I served long enough. So now I ask you, you who hear this, you who may call me bitter, cruel, selfish, was I wrong? Was I wrong to draw the line when they had erased me long ago? Was I wrong to cut the cord they used to climb without ever looking down? Would you have stayed? Would you have kept paying for the privilege of being ignored? Would you have kept showing up for people who only remembered your value when the card declined? Or would you have done what I did, finally, mercifully, and walked out of a house that never once let you call it home? You tell me, because I lived the answer, and I'm done apologizing for it.